Hello everybody, Cone Dodger here, and welcome to the Vector Automotive Challenge. This is the third iteration of the Vector Automotive Challenge, but this time things are a little bit different. I have decided to splinter off the Let's Play Automation series and the Vector Automotive Challenge series, so this is now its own entity. This is its own thing. The Vector Automotive Challenge will be more thematic this time around, so there will be no breaks where we're doing other random builds throughout the series. This will be solely with the intent of building our car company. Our car company this time around will be starting in the year 1960. I had a lot of debate about that. I asked for you guys' input on it, and it was very mixed. A lot of people wanted to see me do the thing where I would go and take an existing car company and modify them. I decided we weren't quite ready for that, as the game does not quite have enough content available to recreate every car of a existing car company's lineup. So that's an idea I will come back to later on, and I do think that is a pretty cool and neat idea. But like I said, something that we'll work on in the future. So, if you are new here, what is the Vector Automotive Challenge? Well, it's basically a fictional storyline created by me, where we'll be taking a startup company and trying to compete versus real-world historic companies. So I'm going to put myself in the mindset of a entrepreneur trying to start a car company in the year 1960. That's a little bit out of my comfort zone. If anybody has been following along, you'll know my main interest is the 1980s and up automotive industry. I don't know as much about the earlier eras of automotive design, engineering, and marketing. Also in-game, obviously, we'll be scaling way back to 1960, which means we're going to have a very different gamut of cars to select from. It means that we're going to have a very different level of technology. So you can see here, if we just choose any random car and go to the chassis, you'll see, yeah, way less options to choose from, and these options may cost different amounts as well, as they were newer technologies in this era than they are in the modern era, for sure. When you got things like, double wishbone suspension in the 60s would be extremely uncommon and almost unheard of, versus the solid axle leafs and coils would be your standard. And that's all stuff that we've really got to learn. Front longitudinal, front wheel drive cars weren't really a thing in the 60s either. They were out there, but they were not nearly to the popularity of the modern era. So where do we start? Where do we begin? I think the best place is to design what I would call a concept car. One of the things I've been doing a lot of, internet research, which is about as shaky a foundation as you can start on, right? I've been doing a lot of research into what kind of design process there was in this era, and concept cars were something that were very important because designers were always pushing to make their company look way more futuristic than they actually were. And that, I think, is where we need to start. We need to design a car that looks like it's a car from the 70s, but I have to scale back my brain and not think about what a 70s car looks like. I gotta think about what somebody in the 60s thinks a 70s car will look like. The purpose of this car will be to make something that will attract people's attention, and not just consumers, but investors and anybody else that's willing to throw our company some money. And for the sake of this series, that's going to be you. I'm going to be designing cars and presenting you guys the concepts and ideas that I come up with, and it's your job to tell me if you think I'm headed the right way, if you believe that you do indeed want to invest in this, if you think this is going to work out, and that will shape how the future of this series basically goes. So the early 60s car design and overall model lineups were interesting. You have a lot of boats, you have a lot of these huge sedans with large cubic inch engines or large straight sixes, things like that, that are people movers. They are not intended for sport, they are intended just to push you around. Design wise, as far as the actual production vehicles go, there's not a lot in the uniqueness of the car's designs. And you'll notice that in the bodies we have to choose from. They are, well, buggy in some cases. They are very reminiscent of the vehicles we already know from this era. And that's because there just wasn't that much variety. You had a limited amount of fixture styles and a limited amount of ingenuity you could do with the body panels and stuff. So, in the end, the cars all looked somewhat similar. And that has happened again in multiple eras of automotive design. But this one, the late 50s and early 60s in particular, as far as I am concerned, there was little to be had in the way of unique automotive design. Everybody was kind of just copying each other and just trying to, inch ahead of each other into more creative uses of their existing materials. So when it comes to the design elements that we have to choose from, the bodies basically that we have to choose from, there is somewhat of a shift in design when it comes to the early 60s. We're moving away from the kind of mobster looking smooth rounded bodied cars. I would almost consider these to be of a European style, but obviously your Fords and your Chevys were producing vehicles like this as well. But this was the dying style of the 60s. See, if we bump this up to 65 and you look at the last 10 years, those style of cars start to go away. You still have these big parade floats, but even those are dramatically different than cars like this. Again, you lose a lot of the older designs as well. So, like I said, I'm going into this with the mindset that I don't know that this is what the 70s car is going to look like, or late 60s, 70s car. But we don't want to choose a body that is already dated if we're going to make it into a concept car. So what I am going to choose is this body. Now, we are an American car company. We are going to be based in the States and use only basically U.S. market parts and kind of technology. I've made that decision because it really impacts the future of the series. If I didn't specify that, then it would get real muddy as we go along as far as the visual design and the technological design of the cars. That's kind of the mistake I made with the last season, so I'm sticking with it this time. We are a U.S. market car company. This initial body does not immediately strike me as a American-looking design, but that's kind of a good thing, because I think it will give me the options to morph this body into something that looks maybe a little bit futuristic and maybe just something unique and eye-catching enough to grab some market attention. Okay, so before I go ahead and start actually designing this car out, let us pick our chassis materials and such. Now, ladder chassis is the norm for the era. Monocoque is kind of the super sports car option, even though, like I said, we didn't really have a whole lot of super sports cars, especially from the American manufacturers. Maybe in a couple of years we'll get there, but right now, not so much. And when you look at the difference, the weight and the stiffness are pretty much the major aspects. So we're going to stick with the ladder, especially since this is a concept car, and those kind of details aren't necessarily as important. The material, I'm going to go with just a regular steel, a strut-style suspension versus double wishbone. When did McPherson strut-style suspensions, easy for me to say, start to become normal? I would say, I'm just racking my brain to cars of this era, and it seems as though this era of car is probably more likely to have a wishbone style setup than a McPherson strut style setup. So let's go with the wishbone, and that's going to give us some benefits, even though it's going to cost a little bit of money. So we're going to be focusing on drivability with this car. So in the rear, if we with coil, it would be low. It would actually be very low, average for trailing arm, and that seems like it should be fine. This is going to be such a heavy car that the drivability is probably not going to matter anyway. We'll see what we can do about it. Alright, so this is a concept car, like I said, and to get the cool lines of the body that we will hopefully be doing, let's do this car in fiberglass, since you can do a lot more molding and smooth, cool shapes with fiberglass than you could with steel. That's part of the reason why your Corvettes and your stuff like that started to become fiberglass, because you could get cooler designs out of it and not be super heavy. It's like you would have to have really heavy, thick steel to do these big, broad curves on a car. So we'll make this one out of fiberglass, but it's just a concept car, so these decisions don't really kind of have any impact on the future of the car. Surprise! I changed the body. I wasn't able to get the look that I wanted with the other one, with this one, so I went for this guy. You can see it's a pretty boxy looking design in its normal shape. So I've massaged it around to give it a little bit of this fastbacky kind of look. Kind of an aggressive, slanted forward front because it's the 60s, who cares about aero? And yeah, I think we've gotten a little bit of a cool design here. Fastbacks aren't exactly common. So this could be something interesting, I think. Time for some fixtures. Alright, so here we have it. The Vector Intrigue concept car. Well, the body of it anyway. I'm pretty new to designing anything that's not of the modern era. So, it's gonna be up to you guys to tell me if you think this is era correct, and if you think that it's something that will intrigue our audiences. Yeah, you see what I did there? I'm almost funny. Let's move on to an engine. This will be another new learning experience for us. Now we have all of the normal selection as far as inline 4.6, V6.8, or a flat plane V8, which I think is pretty unlikely. For a car of this size, I would say the norm would be probably a inline 4 or an inline 6. Inline 6 probably the most likely. So let's try and do a V8 and see if we can make some impressive numbers with that. So for the year 1960, we have cast iron to choose from, or we have cast iron to choose from. We can do very large engines for this body. Yeah, quite large indeed. But I don't think that's necessarily where we need to go just yet. But we gotta remember this is not gonna be high revving. We've got very early technology, so we'll need the displacement to get some power out of it at all. We have all of the heads and valves to choose from. We got push rod, direct acting, overhead, and dual overhead. These two would not be error correct to me, especially for a US manufacturer. Direct acting as well, probably not terribly error correct. Let's see, push rod is probably the most correct. However, looking at the production units and the material cost, I think the direct acting would be reasonable for us to do for a concept car, to try and grab some attention. As far as the bottom end goes, nothing fancy here at all. Engine compression and cam profile, all this stuff, let's not go too carried away just yet. I don't know how these older fuels and older engines really behave. I just have extremely limited experience with the like of them. That looks pretty 60s correct. Carburetors. There's something else I know virtually nothing about. Let's see, I'm thinking, well, we can do multiple singles as well. But let's do twin 2 barrels would be, well, what kind of power? It'd be 373. I'd say that's probably plenty. We'll put a performance intake on there. Since this is a show car, we do want it nice and fancy looking. Super leaded is the fuel we have to choose. We have regular leaded, super leaded, and low quality. I don't think we're going to go for that one. This has to be a car with some wow factor, so we do need some high horsepower number to throw out at the people and make them think that we really have something special. We'll do some dual exhausts. Oh, we don't even have the good mufflers to choose from. We have reverse flow, baffled, and none. We'll do some reverse flows on there and none, because why would we do that? Does this car really need to be loud? Is loud car really the image that we need right now? Probably not. Probably not. So let's do yeah, let's just do twin reverse flows to really quiet it down. So, a bit optimistic with how high it would rev, for sure. We're also having some knock issues. Oh, actually, the valves are not floating like I anticipated them doing. Other than that, it's actually running pretty well. Let's see, how close are we on the fuel octane? 93.5, so we're close. We'll go up on the cam profile, and we'll just go down on the compression a little bit. 261, 295. I think that means that possibly we're underperforming on some of the parts, like the carburetor. So could we throw some quality at something like the... No, what would we throw quality at to get more high end? I thought it would be the carburetor, but I could be wrong. I often am. Haha, top end. There we go. Now we're actually using some of that higher rev band range. Maybe too much of it, in fact. There we go. We got a pretty decent looking performance index. Nice 274 horsepower, 298 foot-pounds of torque. I think those are pretty decent numbers, but we probably have too much exhaust. Yeah, there we go. 300 and 267. Is everything happy? Is it super quiet? I imagine it probably is. Yes, 38.9. I think that's good. And we don't really care about the reliability numbers right now. We only care about these numbers, basically. Alright, there's our engine, nice and cozy on there. It is a cozy fit, isn't it? It's a lot of engine and a little bit of car. So, we're a little bit pre-muscle car era, but we have a little bit of a muscle car brewing here. We'll see what that means for us. It's certainly a little bit of a sleeper, I think. It doesn't really look like it has that much muscle to it. We'll do a manual transmission with a good old 3-speed box because... well, it's a concept car. And yeah, that'll be good. So the drivability of it isn't ultimately that impressive or really necessary. It just needs to have some decent numbers that we can spout out that may or may not be true. Oh, 60s tires. How I know nothing about you. 15s, 14s, I think will get us the wider tires. Yeah, a little bit, but not a ton. We can't offset these rims. Get them a little bit closer to the fenders, but that's really not a look that is too popular in this era. I think those are good looking wheels. Gosh, I wish you could paint the wheels. That would be nice. That would be nice. 165s, could we go wire? Yeah, we could. Oh, we could. There we go. Nice meaty looking tires on there. Very meaty indeed. Drum brakes front and back. How do I even? I have no idea what to do with these. I'll tune them as we go. Under tray, no, that's not really a thing that we are worried about. Not yet anyway. We can reduce this cooling quite a bit. We'll pin it right down so we can squeak some performance out of this guy and move on. I think I want this to be a 5-seater, so 2 in the front and 3 in the back. I left this rear canopy area quite large for that reason, so let's do that. And since this is a concept car, I'm going to hand make this interior to make it look like something really just out of this world. I think maybe that's the theme I'm missing with this car. I need to go back and really pay attention to some of this stuff and do things that are more out of the ordinary. Like putting a phonograph in the car. Gosh, I've always wanted the opportunity to do this, and now is the time. Power steering, and we'll have power steering, and you know what? I think we'll have power steering. Safety, standard. Who cares? Moving on. Standard springs, twin tube, passive. I like this. There's so few options. Sporty suspension. Yeah, that's probably gonna need some tuning. Holy wheel spin, Batman. 65%. Well, I guess that's what you can expect. Those little tiny rear tires on there. I didn't really need to mess with the gearing any. And yeah, let's put the sports compound on there for this car. That didn't help our wheel spin any, which is a little surprising. I think that it probably should, maybe. Anyway, brakes, brakes, brakes. Looks like front tires, front brakes. Looks like we probably are a little bit underperforming. What does this do for us? That would decrease our stopping distance for sure. The front brakes are still underperforming, as are the rear brakes, really. Yeah, well, I mean, actually, they're outperforming a little bit, so it's the fronts that are massively underperforming. We can keep trying to increase that, but that's basically all we can do. Just put some more aggressive pads on it to get rid of some of the fade. And yeah, that's kind of the best we're going to get out of it, I think. So what's up with the handling on this guy? Massive, massive understeer. Wow, I'm so surprised. Wait, no. What could we do? What could we do? We could increase the rear bar. I'm actually raising the ride height a little bit because sportiness is not necessarily the main thing I'm going for with this car. And when I mean that, I mean sportiness as far as like cornering. Sportiness as far as straight line acceleration is important, and cruising is important. So we want a good comfort rating, and we got that up to 34.8. That is actually the highest value of the car. So I think that's the right direction. So here we have it. The Vector Intrigue. Are you intrigued yet? What do you think? Is it interesting enough? Does it grab your attention? We have a drivability of 20, a comfort of 34, sportiness of 8.4, a prestige of 32.5. That was very important to me. This is a concept car. Prestige is everything. You want to have, you know, the big time labels on here to really grab people's attention. So I'm happy with that prestige number. Safety, who cares? The weight is very low, 2,500 pounds. It's a pretty small car, but 2,500 pounds would be really impressive. Really impressive for a early 60s American coupe. So that's something to consider. Something to consider indeed. Hey, there's no tailpipes on this car. It's got downturns. Trust me. Performance stats are decent. A sub 9 0 to 60. A very good top speed, 140 miles per hour. And a quarter mile that is, okay, 16.2. But overall, this car would be, I think, a pretty good platform to start your drag racing car with, if you know what I mean. I have a little downforce in the rear. Why do I have that? Who knows? Apparently that's just due to the shape of the car. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. Alright everybody, this is the part where I need your help. This is not going to play out like last season where I have the final say all and end all. This car could completely fail and go away, and I'd be okay with that. That's kind of the theme that I want. If this car fails, if you guys don't think it's interesting enough to bring your money into the company and try and produce our first actual production car, then I'll try again. We'll start from scratch. The year will be 1961, and we'll make a new concept car to try and grab people's attention. So let me know, is this the car? Is this the car we start our car company with? Is this the design that grabs people's attention enough to give us the investment power to start an actual production vehicle? I will have a straw poll in the description, and overall just basing it off of your feedback in the comments and whatnot. Let me know what you think. I have a lot of plans for this series, and it may not even always involve just building cars in an episode. There may be episodes where we don't build cars at all, so I'm really looking forward to it. Been putting a lot of brain power into it. We're starting a little bit with the format we're familiar with, but I'm hoping to really shake things up as the future goes on. But thanks as always for watching, thanks as always for the support, and I will see you next time.
I tell you, anytime it goes up in the air, it's really hard to determine exactly when. Too many dimensions. Multi-dimensional soccer.